be to your day. May it be everything you require to create everything that you desire. Today, did a little bit of change up in my daily routine to match my growing quality. Today, I changed my the conditions and elevated my standard and quality. I got a question for you. I thought about it earlier. Got a question. If I eat a chicken sandwich, but before we get to that, this week, G.O.D podcast, we got into the aspects of understanding the duality between suppression and repression. Repression is the unconscious state or the unconscious state of us keeping the repressed memory, the memory or the emotional aspect or what is causing the impulse, as opposed to suppression is knowingly pushing whatever event out of our space and then filling that space and that shadow by regurgitation of the regression. That's what we got into the G.O.D podcast. The thought process is, we broke down into 3 segments. First segment, we got into that covert independence. That means you keep trying to keep yourself in a repressed state with your mindset. You continuously keep yourself in the mind. You keep yourself acquiring the condition. And we got deeper into that. Broken Wing. G.O.D podcast is out now. But I got a question for you. If I eat a chicken sandwich, knowing damn well the chicken sandwich is going to hurt my stomach, I know that I should not be eating that chicken sandwich from Popeyes, Burger King, whatever. If I eat that chicken sandwich and I know it will hurt my stomach, I know it's going to leave me fucked up, I know it's going to put me on the toilet, it would be dumb as fuck for me to blame Burger King for the 2 for $5 deal, or it would be dumb as fuck for me to blame Burger King for the 2 for $5 deal, Popeyes for the Chick-fil-A. It'd be dumb as fuck to blame my external for catering to what is my emotional hunger and how they feed my emotional hunger. This is catering to the condition. Devoiding my value or the assessments of my value and the authenticity, learning through my conditions and how they reflect my standard. It would be pointless for me to be upset with Burger King for having the 2 for $5 deal if in reality, I know I shouldn't have ate the sandwich in the first place. This is the lesson that we learn in doing this internal work. It's never been about your conditions. It's been about your standard. Give the example. From a one-bedroom apartment, I am able to put out a quality podcast every Tuesday, drop a lecture class every Friday. I'm able to do these lives every Monday through Thursday. I'm able to do consultations, therapy sessions, readings, all of my spiritual practices and works and the things that I do, all from this space, all from this condition. Because my standard is what sets my tone. I had to learn that inside of my space, that my standard sets the tone. It don't matter where I go into the conditions of the space, it's my standard. The connections challenge my standard. My emotional attachments feed my condition. So my guilt feeds my condition. I want you to understand that. Your guilt feeds your condition. So now inside of your space, you need things to feed your guilt. You need things to feed your insecurity. You need things to feed your need for something. You need something in your space to feed that. But when it's not, when you don't get what you wanted, when you ain't getting what the fuck you wanted, then you blame that. Now you put stipulations on the condition. But you gotta understand your standard. My standard sets my boundary. See, a lot of times living inside of the condition for myself, like give an example of a condition. I put a condition in my space that nothing is going to hurt me, nothing's going to get me fucked up, nothing's going to put me in a position that that's going to play me or make me feel some type of way. So now, greetings, it don't matter what my standard is. Everything is going to challenge my standard to ensure that I can now embrace the conditions of my space. I'm not going to look at. The first thing I'm going to look at is what it looks like, the quality of the condition. See, there's a lot of times we look at the quality of the condition, not understanding that that's there to test my standard. I can go back to my job from last year, 2020. The conditions in my job were reflections of the irritation to a point to force me to assess my standard. I always had the high quality standard with myself, but it was my guilt, it was my insecurity, it was my doubt, it was my fear of not doing it right. It was my fear a lot of the time, all the time, that kept me looking at my conditions and blaming my conditions. That means no matter what I did at my job, no matter what I was doing in a relationship, no matter what was inside of my space, I always had something to openly complain about. So now, this is the key with the going into your internal work. My intentions were set in my conditions, not in my standard. As long as you're always putting your intentions to cater to your condition, that means I want to win $1 million, whether I want $1,000 or $1 million, I'm gonna spend that $1,000 or that $1 million the exact fucking same way, based on me catering to my conditions. Based on me catering to my conditions, because my intention was set inside of my conditions. So now you got to think about these aspects of your conditions. Your condition of that chicken sandwich I just broke down earlier on, the condition of that chicken sandwich was the value that I put. Oh, they got a 2 for $5 deal. I'm hungry. I gotta eat. Remember that got to versus I get to. I got gratitude and I get to eat. But if I don't get the chance to eat, now I got a chance to focus on my energy into something else. So now, for example, this time last year, I was able and had the privilege this time last year to do my 30-day fast. This time last year, I had the privilege to do my 30-day fast. Water and herbs. That's all I drank. That's all I had. In that space, the overwhelm, the feeling of, oh my God, it taught me what I really needed in my life and the quality of the standards that I set in my life. Because now that I took out of my space the conditioning of needing to eat at a certain point in time and eat this same time every day or do this every time, certain times of the day, that became me being autonomous. And we're going to get into the autonomous thought on Friday. But I was in this autonomous state. So I knew when I woke up, it didn't matter what I did, I knew I had to eat at that time. I knew I had to eat. So it didn't matter what the fuck I ate. It didn't matter what the price was. I still always had something to eat. So now I'm sitting in my space, my conditions, at least I'm able to eat. There's people that, so now I had to go back to the points in time in my childhood where that became relevant. At least you got something to eat. There's kids starving in Africa right now. There's this happening here, that happening there. I always had something that could magnify my conditions. Didn't matter about my standard. So now I'm noticing that the quality of what I'm eating is going down. It was all based on my conditions of whatever space I was in. This is what you do when you're emotionally hungry. You'll accept anything. It's like going to the same similar aspect of emotional hunger. Like, I've broken it down to a lot of people. Some of y'all motherfuckers that yell out that they're horny. You're not horny. You just got used to being able to suppress that urge because you're not releasing anything. You're suppressing an urge through some form of condition inside of your space. But all that's based on what you're repressing. Remember, outside, if I'm actively in an unconscious state of repressing shit, that means I'm repressing emotions, repressing memories, repressing these traumatic experiences in my life. Then that means outside in my space, there will always be something that I will want based on suppression. There will always be something in my space I need wanted based on suppression. That means my intentions will always stay within the conditions of what I'm trying to suppress. That means I'll never get anything. The feeling that feeling that I get in the first time will never be the same again because I didn't learn how to set my new standard. I didn't learn how to become more efficient. A lot of times in our spaces, it's because we fear breaking that pattern because we got used to what we got from that pattern. So now I became an advocate for this. Now everything that I'm doing is basically like I'm taking in my knowledge, the information I was learning about myself, I'm trying to take it in as a trophy. I'm trying to take the knowledge and the information in as a trophy. Because that kept my conditions to where they were at. It kept the people inside of my space. Because I was already I already had an attention wound that was present. So in order for me to keep the attention, everything that I brought into my space based on that standard that I was not checking with myself, whether I get a new book, ooh, I got some information. Whether I was a conspiracy theorist, whether I got some new information, as long as the people inside of my space matched the conditioning, I could always give them the information. So my acceptance through frustration, of course, every time I go into my space, I'm always going to go to spaces that spark the frustration. The church didn't make me frustrated. I was already frustrated when I went to the church. I needed that space so I can stay within the condition. My intention was set in the conditioning. So I can go into a church and I can yell out scriptures and say that fuck Jesus and everybody get upset. They fed me. I was a connoisseur for lower level chaos. I was a connoisseur of low quality chaos. I kept wearing that as, I'm wearing my knowledge as a trophy. I'm wearing this information as a trophy. I'm wearing my reactions as a trophy because it keeps me comfortable. It keeps me seen. It keeps me from challenging my standard. I can always blame something else on my conditioning. Every single time, I'm blaming something else on my status. I'm blaming my relationship. I'm blaming the job. I'm blaming them for shit. But without them, okay, cool, we're moving. It's like I've given this exercise to clients before. If somebody is in my space and they have a complaint and I assess in myself, do the self-assessment, and I remove what it is or I deal with it, then and they're still frustrated, now I can see the projection. But I had to first assess myself. But I had to assess myself first. See, a lot of times that self-assessment for yourself is the key. I don't care about we talked about this in the lecture. I'm impartial now. When I go into a space, when I'm now emotionally present, now I'm observing how impartial I can become. That's the next lesson. Remember, when you're going through this, when you're going through your shadow work, when you're going through your shadow work, the first level is assessing with your consciousness, your spirituality. The first things that you're assessing is everything that you're aware of from your lower state of consciousness. The things that you kept going based on those conditions. Those are the first things that you got to deal with. Because that's what you take into the void. That's what you take into the mountain. That's what you taking onto the mountaintop. You taking your insecurity, your doubt, you taking all of that to the mountaintop. On your journey. That's what you get to see in your journey. That's why so many people, when it comes into doing that internal work, you looking at the stuff in your conditions of your space, it don't matter if the stuff in your space, it don't matter if you got the 1-bedroom, the studio, the 5-bedroom house, the 10-bedroom mansion with 10 places to shit, don't matter. You will never enjoy the quality of that condition because your standard has you not allowing your standard to be challenged. Connections challenge your standard. True connections challenge your standard. True connections humble you in the face of your own standard. It forces you to look at how you compromise your standard. Whether you take examples, you're in a relationship, you had this whole narrative, I had this whole narrative in my mind that a motherfucker had to, you all right? Yeah. You ain't never late, we always on time. But think about, go to the aspect of this mindset with your space. In a relationship, regardless of this person's traumatic experiences, traumatic events, whatever it is, they're a reflection of you, no matter what. They gonna challenge your standard. They'll challenge your standard. They're gonna challenge your standard and the quality of your standard. The question is, you gotta move past that point of reaction. Whether shorty look at you and say, why didn't you take me to Jamaica? Or why didn't you take me here? Or old buddy say, hey, why don't you? They're questioning your standard. You've always had questions about your standard. Where's your standard at? Where's your standard at? That's the question that you ask yourself. My standard is internal. Your standard is an internal narrative. My standard gives me the quality of how I learn how to feed my emotional, how I learn how to feed myself and what I best feed myself with. I'm a connoisseur of high-level chaos. I'm a connoisseur of high-level chaos. That means I can accept chaos impartially in any space, and I can allow it to, if it triggers me, it's an experience I gotta learn, or it's something that I now gotta go into the aspects of seeing how impartial I really am. I'm a connoisseur of that chaos. It don't matter if I go, it doesn't matter. My luxury is based on my internal quality of my standard. That's based on my self-worth. That's based on my value. That's based on my ability to reflect inside of my space. Yeah, that's exactly what it's about. I have to remove, in order for me to challenge my standard, in order for my challenge to be standard, I had to remove trying to be right. I had to remove trying to be, the fear of being wrong, or the same fear of being wrong was the same fear of being really right. The same fear of me being a leader was me hiding behind being a follower of some sort. I don't want that smoke. I don't want that. I'm an elder. I've been gifted that aspect. That's my purpose. But I had to go through this process. I had to look at my conditions. My conditions don't mean shit. As we opened up with, from a 1-bedroom apartment, I'm able to give out a quality podcast, produce quality music, produce quality videos, quality classes, provide quality services, all from this space. So it's never been my conditions that were stopping me. It was my fear of challenging my standard because I got comfortable. See, when your intentions are setting in your conditions, my intention is to change my conditions. But I got to challenge my standard first. I had to realize that based on those old patterns from my traumatic experiences, I didn't have any standards. I had no standards. That's why I would accept the things that I would accept. Of course, I didn't have a standard. If I'm accepting the things and I'm always accepting these negative aspects in my life, or I'm always attracting these aspects in my life, blaming other motherfuckers for my stomach hurting, for me being hungry, for me being tired, for me being whatever emotion that it was, I had to realize I didn't have a standard. That's why that shit kept coming in my space. It didn't matter if I was going to the club in Miami and I was popping bottles with the bosses at that point in time, or if I was in the hood, not drinking for a local, but buying for a locals for other motherfuckers. It didn't matter. In both of those spaces, in the space where I was in the hood, I was repressing my memories. I was actively repressing memories. When I was out there with those bottles, I was actively suppressing the emotional voids that I had to face. So the quality didn't matter of what I was taking in. It was still based on it was better than the conditions that it was the false image of the progress of the conditions that I was in. But this is what happened. Since I was not raising my standard naturally through the aspects of applying the information, applying the knowledge to myself, I always ended up in the same damn position. I'm gonna ask you a question. Ask y'all a question real quick. If I could give you the key to the game and ask you a simple question, could you live off of $200,000 a year? Could you live off of $200,000 a year? That means every 6 months you would pay yourself $100,000. Could you live off $200,000 a year? What are the first things that are going to pop up? First things that are going to pop up is everything that you want to buy and, ooh, I can go do this, this, and this. You're already behind on the process. You're already behind on the process. Because the first thing I got to assess is my budget. The first thing I got to look at is my budget. Now I got to look at my patterns that are based on that budget. Now I got to look at my behaviors that are based on that budget. It don't do me no good, because you can give you can get that game from you can get that game today in that example. But if you're not willing to go through the emotional purging that is going to take and the discipline points to go through that point, all you're going to be looking at is my conditions of my space. Is help really a concept? I think we're either doing something mutually beneficial or one of us is being lazy. That's exactly what it is. Help is not like, I don't like, that exact question talking about help, the aspect of help, that aspect of that concept of help, that's what it goes into. Because either way I can give you the game. But if I'm using the game, but I'm talking about the aspect of value. If I put a value on the game or whatever I give out, if I put a value on it, that means I put an intention on my condition. This is to help me get out of my condition. That means I'm automatically, everything that you're going to do is going to reflect your laziness. Like, it's going to reflect the laziness to me. I'm dependent upon you needing something from me to help me fix my condition. That means I will do everything in an external sense on physical attachment to avoid you seeing what you need to see. Because I need you in that space. I need you in that space. I need you to be hurt. I need you to reflect my own insecurity. I need you to reflect that. I remember doing that unconsciously based on the suppression factor, suppressing my emotions. I would suppress my emotions. I would go into a space. I would be emotionally suppressing my emotions. And then I would give up this wild ass fucking expectation that I know can never be met because I didn't have the example of how I met it. I didn't have the example of how I met it. I can tell somebody there's no such thing as excuses, but until I'm embracing the lesson and applying the knowledge that there's no excuse, I'm always going to have people around me I'm always going to attract people that are going to have excuses. Therefore, I'm always going to be sitting in a space, no matter what I do, whether use it to this aspect. I remember going 5 years back. Let's go 8 years back. 8 years back when I was in the aspect of being a personal trainer. I had excuses on the table. That was if I got a couple of clients that, oh my God, I can get out, I would still spend, whether I made $200, whether I made $2,000, didn't matter the price that I made, I always spent it the same. I always spent the money the same exact way. I always had the same excuse. This is only $200. It ain't enough for me to do this. Even to the point of going to the extreme in my comfort zone, even if I made $200 a week and I saved $100 from every one of those points, at a point in time, something was going to come up in my space based on my mindset that I would need to spend the $400 that I saved in that month. Something would come up, an obstacle, rather than being an opportunity, rather than me learning from it, because I was catering to my conditions. I needed that. I needed those aspects in my life. That's how I define my luxury. I had little to no standards, so I didn't understand what luxury was. It don't matter if it don't matter if I go cop the Bentley truck or I go cop the Kia Sophia, the Kia Sportage. Don't matter. Because both of those are going to be used for the same thing. Don't matter if I grab the Bentley truck or the Kia Sportage. Don't matter, because either way I forgot how to walk. It don't matter if I go grab, this is when you go into these spaces with yourself and you're understanding why your trauma bonds. It don't matter if I go into a relationship and give my all or give my least. Either way, I need that relationship to give me some aspect. Good day, good day. I need that aspect in that. I need that point inside of that I need that relationship, or I need the body that's in that relationship to be just as insecure as I am. Because I can now save them from their insecurity, what they're trying to suppress, in order to keep my shit hidden. And keep doing the same thing over and over again. Good day, everybody. I'm sitting there in my space with myself and I keep doing the same damn narrative. I get to the point where it's time to plan. I get to a point where it's time to budget. I get to a point where I'm trying to learn. That's how you look at it. Remember, everything outside, we always got to say, everything outside of us is a reflection of us. So everything that's in my space based on the conditions is something that I can teach myself. It's something that I need to experience to teach myself. So use the example. I was at a job that they worked me to death. I'm always tired. The money wasn't good. Then the money was good, sitting in the space. But until I realized that the only reason that they worked me so hard was a reflection of my acceptance, the reflection of my not wanting to neglect myself or fear of rejection, I didn't understand what was inside of my space. So I couldn't see past my own reflection. I couldn't see the forest for the trees. So I'm in my space. When I started calming down and really accepting that with myself, that yo, I'm lazy. I'm depending on this to set the tone for the conditions in my life. Then I was able to see the people in the space. Whether they were lazy as shit, they were reflecting how I was lazy with myself. Whether they talked shit about me or said whatever they said, the image of them, the perception or the image that they had inside of their mind was only based on the image that I had inside of my own mind. The stories that they made up about me, yeah, exactly. The stories that they made up about me were an equivalent to the same emotional stories that I made up about myself. So then when I started accepting that, I started making those jumps in I stopped questioning my standard. Because I knew I needed to hire, I went from questioning my standard to assessing and cultivating a higher standard. Until I got to the point from the year 4 of my last job, I remember the first time where I was like, I had to change my schedule. Before I got to the point of changing my schedule at my job, I had to assess my budget. How much money it took me to go from week to week, because I got paid weekly. So I knew that the budget for me, I think it was like, I needed $150 a week at that point. I needed $150, I needed $130 a week, but I rounded it up with $20 and put $150. That took care of my Uber, that took care of my food, that took care of everything that I truly needed in that space to maintain what my conditions were, to keep me within a space of balance with myself in the space so I can do my work. Once I achieved this, now everything that I knew after that would be extra. Everything that came into that space would now be an extra. That means automatically that goes into savings. That means I was building up my account, building up my emotional balance. It felt scary at first. It felt overwhelming at first. The guilt came up. Sitting with that guilt. We talked about it on Friday. Sat with that guilt. Sit with the insecurity. Sat with dissolving that expectation. Because naturally inside of my space, motherfuckers was still going out every week. Motherfuckers was still trying to go buy bottles. Niggas was still trying to go smoke. But I had me a new outlet. Sit at the house, learn. Whether it was Bobby Hemmett lectures, whether it was reading up on trust accounts, whether I was acquiring my resources inside of that space. See, a lot of times we look at our conditions and you like, it's based on my conditions, I can't get what I want to get. Exactly. So I'm sitting in my space with myself and I'm like, all right, cool. Now I can do this. I can make this happen. I know I can make this happen. I already have my base. I already have my authentic base. I already know my values, my standards set for this space where I'm at right now. So I can now move in that standard. Now, when I go to the table, that's how I gain my confidence through my standard. My confidence ain't got nothing to do with my conditions. It got everything to do with my standard. Because I remember sitting down with my boss. And I remember changing out my schedule. I was like, hey, here's my new, this is my perspectives for my new schedule. I'm still willing to work weekends, but I can't close because I do this on Fridays. I do this on Fridays. This is my Saturday. I can work these shifts during the week, during the day, but at night I have time for my stuff, the studies and everything I needed to do at the time. Whether it was programming a website, learning these aspects. I'm sitting there in front of this lady. She looked at me and was like, okay. Regardless, she could have said yes or no. But I was like, I provided my case with confidence. My energy spoke in that space. Take it from there. Weeks after that, coming into that 2020, my irritation is at the highest. The chaos is at the highest. That means the irritation, the anger, the last bits of my powerlessness, all of these feelings are at the highest peak, but I'm not reacting to them the way I used to react to them. That's how I knew I was stepping out of that space. Exactly. That's gonna be a key. Like, when I talk about this healing is destructive and being honest, you gotta be honest with your spending habits. Because remember, all of this is a reflection of your emotional underline. That emotional distress, that anger, that frustration, the insecurity, your doubts, everything that you got going on in that shadow aspect of yourself. So now you're sitting in that space with yourself, and it's like, it's not about how long anymore. It's about how efficient is my path. It's about the efficiency of my path. Because everything that's going to come into my space, I'm no longer trying to attract anything. I know I must become what it is to get to that point. I know I must become what it is. I can't just keep doing the employee route or the identity route and then, okay, cool, I'm going to be the identity. Because every time I go to that space, that's what's going to challenge me inside of that space. That means it don't matter how big the house get if I don't know how to manage it. I had a whole conversation with myself before I went to bed. One of my manifestation conversations. Had a whole conversation in my head. I was doing an interview with myself. And this is a part of that internal work, setting your intentions. I had a whole conversation with myself about starting the next LLC that'll be for the aspects of my house, Airbnbs. And I remember like grabbing information. I was like, okay, cool. I know if I go to a luxury apartment complex, and I know all of a sudden it just kept coming through. I'm sitting there in the space. I'm like, I can go to a luxury apartment complex with an LLC, with a balance into an account, and I can be like, hey, do you guys lease out to companies? I can take that apartment. Let's say the apartment's $1,200 a month. I can actually go to the utility company. I can go to the utility company, grab a business account. I can go to my cable provider and go get Wi-Fi through a company account, business account. And I can link those into an all-inclusive through the rent through that property. So I can take it up to about $1,300 a month. About $1,300 a month. I already paid out the lease. So now I can live in that apartment and pay myself the $1,300 a month. There's also another key that with you can spend up to $1,400. You can tax yourself up to $1,400 a month and write that off on your taxes. So I literally can pay myself $1,400 a month and write it off on my taxes. Not only can I write that off on my taxes, but I can write off the depreciation value of the property off on my taxes. Everything that I do to maintain that property. That means the furnishings, the cleaning, all of that aspect in that space. I'm having this conversation with myself. Keys open door, yeah. Like, I'm sitting there in that space and I'm having this conversation with myself, and then I'm looking, because where did this information come from? Where did this resource, where was the connection to that resource? And then I'm like, wait, I remember having a conversation. Donya just kicked in. Like, she was the first resource that taught me, like, gave me the aspects about Ethereum, crypto, gold, and all that aspect. So now I know where that resource is. That's the connection. It forced me to challenge my standard. Even at that point in time, when I was learning it, I was like, the excitement of changing my condition still came up into the space. But then I was like, wait, I'm here to learn information. You're learning, you're assessing your standard. That was a lesson for me inside of that space. Gang, like, that was the lesson for me inside of that space. everything that comes inside of your space is going to be that lesson to you. Your connections challenge your standard. Your emotional attachments keep you maintaining those conditions. So now you got to look at your environment. This is the key when you talk about hermit mode, when you talk about being in that hermit stage, don't matter. Me being in hermit stage, I come out as the Hierophant. If you in the feminine aspect, when you go into the hermit stage, you come out as the High Priestess. It don't matter what I'm doing inside of my hermit mode. All that's going to tell what I'm going to be doing when I come out of it. I can come out as the Emperor, or I can come out as the Hierophant. You going to come out as the Empress, or you going to come out as the High Priestess. You got to accept what you come out of that as. What you became inside of that space. What did you learn inside of that space? It's time to stop catering to your condition. Every single day outside of you see what everything that you consume, everything that's for consumption is catering to your condition. And to the extreme of it is always going to be, you can get this with no credit check today. But you have no sense of ownership. So you can't even benefit off of that. That benefit of anything's better than where I used to be at. Anything, it's not about that. How are you assessing to shift? All this shit down here is food. How are you eating it? What are you eating? How are you taking it in? Are you willing to make that sacrifice? That true aspect of sacrifice. It's not going to be based on, well, I'm going to sacrifice for a couple of weeks my drinking and I'm going to drink something cheaper. If I know that my drinking or my smoking or whatever I'm doing is only associated with me not dealing with an emotional wound. Because now when I go into that space and learn that job, learn that craft, learn whatever it is in that space, that's going to be the replacement. So now I'm dependent upon my job. Now I'm dependent upon this, whatever it is, to replace me masking my suppression or my repression. That's what we got into this week on the God Hour podcast. That regurgitating repression. You know, it's three segments. The three segments. The first segment that we got into was the aspects of that covert independence. The section that we got into was the self-destructive solace, and the last one we got into is the broken wings. This Friday, we're going to be getting into that autonomous thought. The power of autonomous thought. We're going to get deep in that on Friday. I desire you to be the fucking best. You have one or two choices in this shit. You can keep doing what you're doing and acting and then saying and keeping into the trend with yourself, catering to your conditions, or you can start catering and understanding and raising your standard. You are the fucking best. We are one. It's time to be impartial. It's time to heal. Everything from the consultation, readings, many of my other services, hit me up in the inbox. Hit me up in the inbox in the DM. Let's get something cracking today. Let's get the appointment set today. But I desire you to be the fucking best. I love you. We love us. Ashe.